And this is going to be the last match of the day and of the weekend. It's going to be Minneapolis Maggots versus Mirage Esports. I'm going to host as I was going to say as always, but we're rotating around here. I'm Beef, and joining me is Volamel on the Analyst desk as well. So we just saw a great game between Bird Brains and Low Budget Pros, and so we'll see if our last match of the day is going to round it out. We've seen 3-0s all weekend. Again, given that this is a Swiss bracket and just a giant one at that, definitely as expected. But we have a lot of names that we recognize on the side of Mirage Esports. So let's go ahead and start there, Volamel, because this team has a lot of star power in the roster.
Definitely. I mean, we've got two players coming in from the old Renegades lineup, then, transition into the Kingarna lineup. A lot of these players, Jesus, Jur, Red Start, I believe people might know as a substitute, Chain. These are people that, even the most casual viewer has seen before. I'm looking for big things from them. But even that being said, on the other side, the Minneapolis Maggots, I'm hoping they can take a game. I'm hoping we don't have a 3 Overwatch. Not to meme about the scores, but I'd like to see some a little bit more competitive, and this might be the game that we get that wish.
Yeah, absolutely. If we look at the SRs alone, yes, there is a 300 difference between them, like 4.5 for Mirage, 4.2 for Minneapolis. But again, if we were to quoting Silas again, the SR doesn't matter here. It's all about the roster, how well they can play together as a team. And sometimes, teams have weird beginnings. We chatted with Minneapolis Maggots prior to this game, and they told us that they met each other somewhere very interesting, Volamel. I don't know if you recall, but it was they met in Moon Sub Discord. So, I mean, I don't know what we want to draw from that, but I mean, have we seen teams come together in this kind of way? I mean, they all are very skilled, right? Each of their accounts are very high level. So I'm not sure exactly if there's anything we can take away from that.
I wouldn't look into that specifically too much. I mean, people meet each other all kinds of crazy ways. I think
yeah.
I think there's a couple of people that met online, had a kid. It happens. So it's
met
not
you at Cheesecake Factory. So.
Exactly, that's true. Things happen. People meet, and maybe Moon has passed some wisdom down. Perhaps, and maybe they're operating under some secret strategies. So I'm looking at you, Moon. I want to see them strats.
Could he be behind the?
He could be the mastermind.
Exactly. Yeah, with the strats, with the elite strats. Talking in the ear between the games. We'll have to see. But I guess let's go back to Mirage Esports, because again, for this roster, there's a lot of names that we recognize, and you talked about. I think maybe the one that is going to be most known is Jesus. For his tracer play. I guess for people that don't know, what should we know about Jesus, his tracer, and his history as an Overwatch esports player?
Well, he has been playing previously on Kingarna and, back in the Contenders days on Renegades. Overall, I think he's probably one of the better tracers that is a free agent right now that at least I have any kind of beat on. I think he's fairly aggressive. I wouldn't say that he's too divey, but he's just a very serviceable guy. I think he's just a well-off tracer. I think there's not necessarily too much to say there. I think it's very just standard, very kind of GC Busan pre-level up era, just very good, very standard. Communicates well on dives well. Just an overall good player. I do believe he does have a Widow. I could be mistaking him with Zachary, but I want to say there was an Anubis clip back in the day where Jesus popped off on Widow. So you might want to pay attention to that if the map set allows for it. But there again, they could possibly pass that Widow off onto Red Start. Played for Rocket Esports. I've heard good things. I can't personally say that I've watched too much Rocket Esports, but I've heard quite a bit, and I'm interested to see him, possibly pop off. There again, Jur, similar to what Seamoose was last game, looking towards him to kind of bind this team together, become the glue, and really call the shots here.
And in terms of the dive you talked about, that's going to be unlocked now with the tracer, like Jesus, what he's going to bring. Progi is actually going to be I don't know if he's going to be playing today. It's actually he's going to be subbed in by Shane. So again, if you guys have been watching the Tier 2 scene, Contenders Trials for Kungarna, he was the main tank for this team, and his Winston is actually nutty. So looking forward to see that. So for but this team though, we do have something to possibly bring them back a little bit down to earth. Their roster has been together for only 2 weeks, right? But in that time, they have been scrimming about 24 hours per week for this tournament for Open Division. So I guess in terms of that, for a team that is just getting together in a roster that altogether has been together for 2 weeks only. Granted, 4 of their members have been on Kangana prior to that. What are some things that you anticipate could go wrong for this squad, given that they don't have all of that playtime together as a squad of 6?
So the synergy is going to be my big question mark leading into this match. How are the dives? Are they precise? Are they is the target calling there? That's going to be something that I think a lot of teams are going to struggle with, and with very little time to have gelled together and kind of learn the ins and outs and the little little nuances to each player. I think it's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back, especially for Mirage here. But there again, I think that veteran status that a lot of these players have. I think they've gone through a lot of different iterations of how teams run, how teams function. So maybe they get a little bit of a boost. They kind of enter a hyperbolic time chamber in that sense, where they don't need a ton of time. They've played on a lot of these teams before. They know what works. They know what doesn't work. Maybe they apply it to this team, and they might actually have an advantage. But we might be looking at a disadvantage, and it might be an advantage to them.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's going to be a big question mark going into this game, and we'll learn a lot from the first map. Again, it's going to be on the control center, so the one where the actually maybe the shot calling on the control center may not be as important. It's about the individual plays, but of course, when you have the coordinated dive, that's just going to power your way through taking that for sure. But I guess looking at the Minneapolis Maggots side, right? These are not players that we have necessarily heard of before. So I guess in a squad that is unknown, is there an advantage in, again, like the other team just not knowing your strength here? And if Minneapolis Maggots are going to take this series, what is it? How are they going to do it?
We did talk to Minneapolis, and they do kind of lean towards the dive a little bit, but it looks like they also can play something a little bit slower. They do like Vazaria, so they possibly could be hiding strats. Like you said, this team isn't necessarily someone who we've ever heard of. Possibly they could be very popular in the kind of the underbelly of Overwatch tier 3 scene. So it's possible that there are scrim footage out there, but I would kind of bet on the latter. It's possible they could be hiding strats. It's possible that they, Mirage has a hard time preparing for them, and they might not necessarily know exactly what to expect. But there again, they're looking at a very low cost, or not a low cost, but a low staging ground of how long this team's been together. They haven't been together for too terribly long. They practice about 2 to 3 times a week, so they've got some time under their belt. But will that combat well with the kind of veteran nature that Mirage brings? We'll have to see. But I think this is going to be a little bit closer. I got this gut feeling. I think we might see our first map take.
I'm feeling it. I think chat's feeling it too. Let us know there as well. We're definitely watching, and I think the thing we do want to bring up too about, again, we talked about the sub Discord. We didn't necessarily say like how or why they met there and formed a team, right? Just because you're in a Discord as a sub, you don't just say, "Oh, let's just form a team randomly." It's because they were playing together on. I guess they have the internal tournaments there and on those rosters, and so looks like they took 2 of those teams that were always winning back and forth and said, "Let's make a mega team and let's enter Open Division. Let's set off on our path to pro to get up through the Open Division and try to get to Contenders Trials." So it's definitely going to be an interesting story. We've seen a lot of the Royal Roaders story. I think is the one that's always exciting to watch. Someone who has a lot of potential, who can get to the top and then does and rises to the challenge. So, I totally agree. I think this matchup is going to be the one, if anything, to break our 3-0 streak for week 1.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've got the Moon super team against the French Canadians hailing from Quebec. Who's going to take it? I do have to lean with Mirage a little bit, but there again, like
Yeah.
I said, I think the Moon Super team, they're gonna come in there. I think they're gonna actually score a point. I think they're gonna make Mirage take a step back and go, okay, maybe we haven't heard of these guys, but they're actually quite good. They've been participating in these other tournaments. They've thrown these two teams together. That's got to be worth something. So
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting to say the least on how this game rolls out.
Absolutely. We always say that casters should not be biased, but what about hosts? Can I be biased? I want Minneapolis to take a match and take the series off of this squad from from the Canadian side and the former Congarner squad. Come on, we got to see a David and Goliath story. This is a little bit of what we're seeing here, except David's been working out, right? So it's not as crazy. He doesn't only need the pebbles between the middle of the forehead.
They got those biceps though. Don't need pebbles.
That's right. Big shoulders, big back can carry the rest of the squad. So, but I think that's going to do it for our preview of the match, guys. But don't go away. We're going to take a break and we're going to get the lobby loaded up for this team. Don't go anywhere because it's going to be an electric matchup between Minneapolis Maggots and the Mirage Esports squad. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
desperate. Oh, here they come for a chance, for adventure. What's your poison? What's your pleasure? Oh, my city, she never sleeps. My city, she never weeps. My city, she keeps me alive. Give it up for my city, oh, oh, give it up for my city, oh, oh, give it up for my city, oh, 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 give it up. My city, my city. My city, my city. Where do you go when your heart's with a fever? Won't you scroll, but you won't leave her? Oh, here we are, all the freaks and believers, all the sweet neon dreamers. Oh, my city. She never sleeps. My city, she never weeps. My city, she keeps me alive. Give it up for my city, oh, oh, give it up for my city, oh, oh, give it up for my city, oh, 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 give it up. My city, my city. My city, my city. Give it up for my city, oh, oh, give it up for my city, oh, oh, give it up for my city, my city, my city. Give it up for my city, running wild and looking pretty, oh, oh, give it up for my city, my city, my city. I'm standing on the edge of a cliff. Realize there must be more to life than this. Reaching for the stars, traveling so far, like a dragonfly. Just grab my hand from heaven send with me tonight. Trying to find our place in this world. Reaching for the stars, traveling so far, like a dragonfly. Keep our secrets there, broken alone. I feel the rain crashing down all around this empty town. I'm searching for the lost and found, but you don't care, you're unaware. Keep moving like the scars aren't even there. It's in the air like a blazing flare. Don't stare 'cause the flames will burn us. I thought you were the one for me. That's why I gave you everything. Held you close by the stormy seas. Oh, you meant the world to me. I used to kiss your head when you cried for me. Hold your hand while the pain was over. Keep you warm by the roaring sea. You meant the world to me. Oh, you meant the world to me. Oh, you meant the world to me. My darling dear, you're never here. When I'm in pain, you hide and disappear. Like shadows in the atmosphere, charting the stratosphere. Yeah. I prayed for you and kept you near, in hopes you'd chase away my fears. I'm on my own, you made it so, and now I'm chasing nightmares through. I used to run with you through the great big leaves, laugh at you when you laugh at me. Hope for us because I believe the home was just you and me. I thought you were the one for me. That's why I gave you everything. Held you close by the stormy seas. Oh, you meant the world to me. Oh, you meant the world to me. Oh, you meant the world to me. Oh, I'm gonna do this on my own. No point in blaming you, you did not know. Oh, I thought you were the one for me. That's why I gave you everything. Held you close by the stormy seas. Oh, you meant the world to me. Oh, you meant the world to me. Oh, you meant the world to me. Oh, I'm gonna do this on my own. No point in blaming you, you did not know. Oh, I'm gonna do this on my own. No point in blaming you, you did not know. I thought you were the one for me. That's why I gave you everything. Held you close by the stormy seas. Oh, you meant the world to me.
I'm feeling so hollow. Don't you know? Don't you know? I'm living in shadow. Don't you know? Don't you know? I fell for fool's gold. I fell fell for fool's gold. What did I know? What did I know? I fell for fool's gold. I fell for fool's gold. What did I know? What did I know? You a fool's gold. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And I did it all for love. Yes, I did it all for love. Oh, they say fools believe in it, so I guess I'm one of them. Oh, don't you know? I fell for fool's gold. I fell for fool's gold. What did I know? What did I know? I fell for fool's gold. I fell for fool's gold. What did I know? What did I know? You a fool's gold. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
We're better off as strangers. Believe me when I say, loving me is loving danger. Your heart is bound to break. I walk alone in the night, neath the pale moon. Loving's for the fools. Baby, beware of my bite. I'm alone, I'm alone, I'm a lone wolf. 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 I'm a creeping through the shadows and the corners of your mind. I go where the wind blows. I run but I don't hide. I hear the call of the wild, whispering the name. No, I can't be tamed. My heart belongs to the night. I'm alone, I'm alone, I'm a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf.
And we are back for our last match of the day. It is finally here between Mirage Esports and Minneapolis Maggots. We're just going to say Minneapolis for now because I have so much trouble just saying even that name. But again, it's your host, MooshuBeef, and joined by Volamel here on the desk. Volamel, you excited for our last game today?
Yeah, I mean, we touched on this in the pre-show. I think this one's actually going to be pretty close. So I'm excited to get our first non-3 Overwatch. I think this is going to be fun.
Yeah, O3 watch is hopefully going to be going away after this first week, but we'll see. Again, with the giant bracket, which we'll be talking about what this tournament actually is, if you guys don't know. Again, Overwatch Open Division, step 1 to the path to pro. Before then, of course, got to plug, this broadcast is brought to you by Broadcast.gg. So if you're an aspiring broadcaster, if you're a caster, producer, observer, analyst, host, come join the Discord. Link is down below. And we even have great chats with pros like Uber, Shouts, and Hex and ZP about how do you actually even approach casting and different elements of that. They're all really great. Listen to them. They're actionable, allow you to take some of that knowledge and convert it into and helping your own broadcasting. So definitely check it out. You're welcome in the Discord. So as we continue on then, Open Division, Volamel, what is this tournament and how does it fit into getting to OWL eventually?
So Open Division is the beginning of Path to Pro. It is the genesis of your future esports career, because I know all you Twitch chat, you little memers, I know you want to be pro gamers. This is where you start. If you're not in here, you should be. You know, you get to practice against high GM teams, even top 500 teams. You know, today we're actually getting to see former contenders players play. So this is where you should begin. It starts off with a large Swiss bracket, 5 weeks of regular season, top 16 get to playoffs, and then I believe the top 4 teams make it to contenders trials, where you'll be facing off against the, you know, the lower seeds, bottom 4 of the contenders region, wherever you reside. You face off, whoever wins takes the spot, loses, you get relegated, sent back down to Open Division. Again, this is where you start. This is where you begin your journey to being a pro gamer. And yeah, it's where everybody gets to start. It's everybody gets to test their mettle against some of these top teams. So I'm interested to see what everybody has to offer.
Absolutely. And even in those contenders spots, those teams that were the academy teams, they're not safe, I believe, from the relegation too. So you guys can go battle through your way through the Open Division, get to the contenders trials, and you can take one of their spots if you're bringing your A game. So, but in terms of for this format itself, for this tournament, Volamel, we have about 1,000 teams. So you want to talk through what the Swiss bracket is and how the season looks for season 2 of Open Division?
So Swiss basically means that each team is going to be playing against another team with a similar match record. So you're not going to be seeing a 0-4 versus a 4-0. You're going to be seeing similar match records playing against each other throughout the week. So first week, it's going to be a little, you know, mismatchy because nobody's played yet. So we have to kind of calculate that kind of MMR system, which Swiss does fairly well. Once we get into the later stages in the later weeks, games will be much closer because of how the match record situates. Obviously, if you have a ease of bracket, you know, it's going to be a little bit easier, but that's pretty much it.
Awesome. And quick thing before we hand off to the casters and get this game started, Volamel, give me one thing to look for from each squad here. Let's start with Minneapolis. What do they got to do to win?
Minneapolis, full court press. I want to see aggression out of them. You are playing against a more seasoned team. I want them to, you know, this is practice for them. This is nothing to worry about. Play up, play aggressive, and play in their face.
Great. And for the squad of Mirage Esports, what do they got to do to secure their victory?
I think you can't overstep your boundaries. I think this is, again, fairly equal skill team. You're going to want to respect your opponent, play controlled, you know, keep it within, bring it back. Don't overstep your boundaries, respect your opponent, because if you don't, you might end up losing maps.
Well, we're going to see, can the Moon sub squad take down Mirage Esports of the seasoned veterans? We're going to have to see. Let's throw it over to the casters, Lafon and Mukaikubo. Guys, take it away.
Thank you, Mushu. And so I'm Mukaikubo, and this is Lafon. We're going to be your casters for this match. As we get the teams into the lobby and get them ready to start, we're going to be doing a control map first, as we always do in the Open Division format for this season. To go off of what the host and the analyst said earlier, the players I want to keep an eye on, first off for Mirage, I'm going to be keeping an eye on Haku. Haku is another one of those more well-known names for Mirage Esports. He's a Zenyatta main, and as we've seen in Overwatch League, a Zen who can get kills is extremely important. On the side of Minneapolis, I'm going to be keeping my eye on Rock MF, just because he's the off-tank flex, and who he picks is going to tell us what strategy they're going with on that map, on that attack. If it's Zarya, we're going to see a more death volley comp. If it's a diva, we're probably going to see a dive. So those are the two that I'm going to be keeping an eye on both as we start up here and as we go through the map. Lafon, what are you looking for?
Thanks, Mukai. I'm looking for, I want to pull something Volamel said. He wanted to see a really aggressive play come out from Maggots. Actually, he used a basketball term, which I'm not familiar with, but there's something here that Maggots are definitely the underdog in this situation. There's no question about it in my mind. Mirage has the backing of both the experience of the players specifically, even though their team may not be necessarily as long-standing. That said, Maggots needs to come in. They actually need to be very aggressive with how they play. They need to be in the face of Mirage. They need to make it uncomfortable for them. And at this point in time, essentially, they don't want to let Mirage execute. If they can do that, they may have an opportunity to come in here and, take a map, maybe even bring something even in the series.
So what I'm also going to be looking for is when you have a disparity in terms of how much each team has practiced, because both of these teams are less than a month old, and Mirage has obviously got more high-level experience. They're doing a little bit more scrims. What you look for is surprises. I think Minneapolis, they need to come out. They need to come out with Mirage isn't necessarily expecting. So not so much on this control map as we get started here and go to Ilios as our first map. Nick does play a lot of Torbjorn on ranked. I would like to see, I think, when they get into a defensive situation, I'd like to see the surprise cheese strat just to see how Mirage copes with that.
It would be, I think, interesting, although not necessarily reliable, especially here on Ilios, which is such an open map. Control maps in general, right?
Yeah.
You don't really have the opportunity to set back, really set up a defensive position unless you take the point early. And you really can't rely on that, especially against a team as good as Mirage is. And Minneapolis comes into this particular one, and they're going to be probably playing something well specifically, as mentioned, as our first stage here. So this map has historically seen, or I should say has had an opportunity to see sort of that anti-dive composition come out. So, your Orisa, your Roadhog, sort of a slower composition. And if they end up going with that, it may actually end up being a benefit, especially against, a dive comp coming from the other side.
And especially on Well, where whether or not you get the environmental kills, the boops of death, that can swing a team fight just by itself if your Lucio angles the boop one way versus another. So there's an element of extra randomness as we get started here. What do you see out of the two comps that's a little bit strange?
The Ana right away is a little bit it's a little bit odd here, as we are starting off on Ilios right into the match itself. Mirage in the team on red, and Minneapolis in blue. So they are going to be setting up that Orisa composition counter to the dive from Mirage. They're looking, poking away, just trying to find some angle of attack. Jesus on the flank, trying to find that entry frag for his team. The hook comes through, doesn't quite find what he's looking for from Rock, and Jesus now on the high ground is going to be able to poke Fry. There comes the dive, Progi in very aggressively. The Bionade, though, comes out, and that's going to bring Fika very, very low. The DMAC comes in. Red Start, though, with the first actual kill. And the positioning on point very much in Mirage's favor, though. Mascot with a huge halt off the side of the map. The Well taking its first victim here early on in Oasis, or in the Well point of this map of Ilios. Jer, the last one left alive here. The two supports going to have to get out of heck and dodge through the side of the point as the control meter starting to build up here to Minneapolis.
So the key there was that Minneapolis was able to react correctly to the unusual dive. The attack came in from high ground. They angled the Orisa shield. They stayed on point. They didn't give anything up. I think that's why they were able to take this point first, and that's critical in King of the Hill.
Red Start off that McCree onto the Genji, gets 2 kills for himself with the assistance of that Primal Rage from Progi in the backline. The Biotic Grenade just unable to really stabilize. Pulse Bomb going to be used on Gravy. Gravy gets Jesus at the last moment. The counterplay from Tracer. The Resurrect will come through, however, so that will be nullified as Red Start, having just switched to the Genji, is already up to 67% on that Dragon Blade. So a very aggressive early play here from Red Start and Mirage simultaneously, and
Red
they
Start
nullify
did
that.
something, sorry, low-key brilliant there. Mercy was stuck in the well. He jumped into the well and climbed the way out just to give Jur on Mercy someone to toggle onto to not die in the well. So one of those little subtle things.
Very aggressive play here coming in. The Valkyrie's coming in, rather. Tripping over the Coalescence, as it were. The Nano Boost on Mascot, as they choose to come in with this engagement, they're not really finding any value out of this nano boost beyond the D-Mech on Diva. As Red Start with the Dragon Blade countered immediately by the Sound Bearer Transcendence to keep him up. Keep going. Red Start getting damage and here by Jur on the Mercy, and that's going to clean up the team fight here. Jesus getting the last kills to really end this with a punctuation of intensity.
Despite the fact, and we're going to go to replay here to see that dive and how it went. So what I really like about what Minneapolis is doing, despite losing that fight, they're not reacting scared. They're not reacting shook. They're doing what they're supposed to do against a dive. The execution is just a little bit off, as you might expect from a team that hasn't played together that much.
Jesus with a very aggressive Pulse Bomb on Weeds, and that's going to delay Minneapolis a lot further. They are switching to that dive now, having gotten off sort of that initial Orisa Hog composition. The Ana, a very valuable experiment. They do get the Nano Boost off, but no value otherwise. Mascot 75% to his Primal Rage, not much else gained from it. And now, Minneapolis, they have 80% against them on that control percentage. They are going to go in now. Echo poking away as the dive counters in through for Mirage. The dash comes in, it's a trade. Genji for Genji, they get the Dragon Blade. The Resurrect, though, comes in, it's a double kill for Mascot. Echo goes down, self-destruct, not going to find any value as Rock just hides behind the pillar, zoned out. Now the two tanks, the only ones on point. Mascot forced to Primal Rage to stay alive. They're now up to 99% on Mirage, and overtime will be taking in effect. D-Mech comes in, Mascot also still in that back line, trying to find some more value with that Primal Rage. Gets stuck with the Pulse Bomb, not able to get out to be healed in time. Wheats can't actually resurrect as Red Start harassing non-stop. The kill comes through Fika just to get the cleanup. The Valkyrie for the last moment. Nick goes down. That might spell disaster. Gravy, the only one stuck on point here for Minneapolis, as he's the only one left alive. Tries to get back to contest, can't quite make it, and that will be round one to Mirage.
So what I see that I really like the way that Mirage is diving. They're routinely getting value out of their dives. They're routinely getting value in getting picks on the back line. What Minneapolis is doing, their own dives are not doing badly offensively, but it's the supports that are having a hard time staying alive. Those critical extra seconds in the face of a coordinated dive right now, that's really a problem. And that you can only really fix with team chemistry, team coordination. It's good comms. It's asking for the peel at the right time from the right hero. So that's something that I'm going to be keeping an eye on in the second point as we go here. Got some swaps. We've got Nick going on to Moira as well as Wheats on Lucio.
So they are going to choose to go with a tanky comp here, are Minneapolis, and perhaps they spotted something out that they really, as you mentioned, they weren't getting any value from their dive, realistically speaking. I think they got, after they switched to dive, something like 3 kills maximum, so definitely isolated out there. They're going to rotate directly to point, take point control early on here, and force Mirage to come to them. But Echo with a hook gets the first kill on Progies. I believe he pulls him off the point. Rock gets demeched here, so that's even in terms of the trades of tank for tank. Hook whiffing this time as Echo not able to really reel anyone in this area as Red Start trying to harass in. Nick just healing his team up, and that will be, again, point first captured here by Minneapolis.
So once again, they're going to take the point first. I think they wanted to dive onto the point as quickly as they could and fight there just to try to accentuate their own advantages. I think they like Deathball. I think they're going to try to stick with it here going forward, unless it's a map where it really, really doesn't work. Because I really like the coordination that I see here out of them with this comp.
Absolutely, and they seem to have identified something in the dive coordination or target selection from Mirage here to have Minneapolis as they're going to, just keep standing on point and say, hey, come to us. We've got the health pool here. You got to use something to dislodge us. And as of right now, Mirage does not seem to have an answer, though they do have the DPS ultimates coming online. Pulse Bomb out. It hits the shield. Transcendence going to go right back in as the Dragon Blade is there to assist. Whole Hog to nullify and push back. Earth Shattered only catches 2. As they're needing to get these kills, the shield will come up in time. Mascot not even come close to dying from it specifically, though Jesus comes in afterwards for the cleanup. And now, all but a brawl on point. Pulse Bomb on the Primal Rage, and it's going to be Minneapolis here continuing to clean up as Rock comes through with the D-Mech. Red Start needs to stay alive here. 1 HP, 2 HP. They're going to reset here, it looks like, perhaps, as Fika does go down. Red Start still very, very low as he's standing on top of the Lighthouse. They're actually going for the Valkyrie. They want to recontest here. 70% on the control point, building here for Minneapolis as Jesus comes through with the kill and is avenged immediately. Is Mascot by his off-tank Echo. And Red Star, they're throwing ultimates in here. They seem to see something. Red Star finds only 1, though, and then is besieged by 4 tanks. Effectively gets the D-Mech on the Diva. though the self-destruct is right there. They're going to stall this out to 90% and counting. Echo, yet again, finding another D-Mech on Fika as Mascot swings away. He will go down shortly as Rock is D-Mech'd yet again. And finally, in overtime, the kills switch over far enough that Mirage can retake for their, or actually I should say, take for the first time here on Lighthouse.
What I think that Mirage is gambling on is greater ult discipline. I think they're gambling on the constant pushes, drawing out all of the ults from Minneapolis, while they've built up a little bit better ult bank themselves. That didn't quite work, but they were able to take the point. So now they're kind of in a bind here. They've got to win every fight from here on out, and there's going to be room for 3 or 4 of them.
3 or 4. So they do have the ultimates here that they can hold this first push here from Minneapolis, as the sound barrier is invested straight away. Primal Rage right back out as Progi is brought down, and again the first kill comes in on Wheats. They're going to use the Dragon Blade as well. They've used quite a bit here. The only thing not coming offline for them is the self-destruct and the Valkyrie, which they have not quite earned yet. So Mirage used a lot to shut down that play that, quite frankly, only the sound barrier was used to really invest.
Yeah, now Minneapolis knows where they want to hold. They're doing, Mirage is going back up, holding in the same point. They've got the ult advantage. They know what they're about to push into. I think this is the fight that Minneapolis has to circle and say, this is where we win the point.
They do have that one fight win in their bank, or in their playbook here. Do Minneapolis, as they choose to go through a brilliant dash by Red Star's going to get him 34% on that Dragon Blade directly. Echo with the whole hog into the Matrix, and he's going to be blown back by the deflect. Countered immediately as Haku comes in with the final blow. Self-destruct on point, zoning out. Wheats, he somehow gets caught out by that. As now it's going to be disastrous here for Minneapolis as they are using ultimates, but they're not actually finding any value. The point, though, does switch over as Fika goes out. D-Mech'd. Gravy now trying to find some value. Red Star gets the Dragon Blade. They need to retake here. The kills are coming in. Finally, Progi kept alive by his support, by Jerem with the Valkyrie, and the cleanup comes through. They're going to reset the point back in their favor, and now up to a healthy 82% and counting on this second point that they need to capture to win the map.
A little bit sloppy. I think they got focused on take the point and we'll win, but they were only able to take the point after the team fight was already not going their way. Now they don't have a lot of time to get back on, and this is a must-win.
A must-win. The Transcendence is on the field for Mirage as they're going directly to the point. Mascot caught out. Nick goes down. That Ana is so slow and immobile, not really there. Big Earthshatter perhaps catches 2, but the follow-up is just not there. Red Start down to 1 HP yet again. How many times have I said that so far? Gravy with the self-kill as he falls off the map, I believe. They can't get back to the point in time, and Mirage Esports will take map 1 Ilios 2-0.
And, if there were any doubts about Minneapolis coming to play and not being intimidated by the greater experience of Mirage's players, I think we've answered that. Even though it was a 2-0, it was a lot closer than a lot of 2-0s that we've seen so far this weekend in Open Division. I love the aggression by Minneapolis. They're playing their hearts out right now. They've been throwing everything they can at Mirage, and it's almost been enough. So close. Lafon, given that we're already seeing Minneapolis's high effort, what more can they do to pull out a map here?
I mean, they showed a hand that I think was perhaps their closest bet to beating Mirage here. On the first map on Ilios, they did run the anti-dive, as I mentioned, and then of course the triple tank on second point, the Roadhog, Diva, and Reinhardt. So they definitely have something that gave Mirage trouble. The question is, can they, play the map pool to the point where they can actually take advantage of what seems to be a composition that is giving Mirage at least a little bit of trouble here? Perhaps it's not something Mirage is, familiar with or hasn't really practiced against specifically. There may be something in the way that the Minneapolis team is sort of running this particular comp. But at the moment, I think for Minneapolis, it comes down to the fact that their rotations are just slightly bit off. They want to fight. They held to 9-9, and they didn't isolate the particular time when they really needed to go in and what their fight win condition was. If they can really come back in and sort of tighten up that particular rotation that they came in with, I think they actually have a chance here in the second map.
So you say win condition, and that's something I always bang on about when I'm on a cast or I'm on an analyst. You have to know going into a team fight what you want to do to secure the fight win, to secure the map win. One thing that I've noticed is that Mirage is doing extremely good at not getting killed when they're low. A lot of times you would see Minneapolis very quickly chip down one hero on the other team to low, like 20, 30, 40 health, and then not secure the kill because Mirage knows how to protect their wounded. That's one of those sneaky little veteran tricks that it's a lot harder to do than it sounds like. Oh, well, you've got people who are hurt. Well, don't let them get killed. Well, how do you do that in Overwatch? Usually it's the tank's job, and are you running tanks who are trying to dive on the enemy, or are you running tanks who are trying to protect? If you can do both of those functions at once, if you know based on positioning about when you're going to be needed as a diva with your defense matrix or with a Winston as your shield, that's how you can win team fights. Buy time for your supports to heal your wounded.
And I think that's certainly something I want to highlight Progi from the last map. There was not only times where he was in the front line really soaking up damage, but quite frankly, there was times where I thought he should have been focused a lot harder and just didn't take damage. It seemed almost like Minneapolis just didn't look at him, and he was able to do a lot of work in through the back line to really come in, and especially against a quad tank or a triple tank. Sorry, you'd kind of expect the Winston to sort of be, not quite center stage, but he quite frankly did a lot, especially there on that second point.
Absolutely, and we are going to be going to Junkertown next, home of the famed pirate ship strategy. I'm hoping to see a pirate ship because it's a lot of fun for me to watch. It's something a little different from the usual, so here's hoping we do get to see an Orisa Bastion combo just try to sail on through. Mirage is going to be starting off on offense here, so we'll see if the wily veteran team's willing to use the pirate ship approach. On defense, it might be time for the cheese to come out. I think that now that they've shown that they can stand toe-to-toe with Mirage fighting conventionally, maybe not quite as good, but they're definitely in the same conversation. I think now might be the time to see, well, can we throw something weird at them, and will that work any better?
And taking a first glance here, it's not exactly what you would call out of the ordinary from either of these teams. Both of this composition so far are familiar, if not necessarily widely practiced. Although I think the defense here has somewhat of a standard setup. Though the double sniper, single support comp from the attack has been somewhat popularized, at least here in more recent memory. As the fight, or as the map commences, it will be the Bastion setup, as mentioned, with that double sniper. The Hanzo and the Widowmaker. Red Start around the side, looking for some value behind the shield of Mascot. And
two of the keys to look at on Junkertown are how quickly does the attacking team set up the pirate ship if they're running it, and where does the defense try to hold? Mirage, they set it up really quickly. Minneapolis tried to defend mostly on the low ground with a couple people on the high ground, and it didn't go so well. No deaths yet, but they're being pushed back real steadily.
The hook comes in on Haku. Haku, though, forced to sit in recon. Jesus comes in with the first kill. Mascot cleans up. They're not really able to take much value as Gravy comes in with the kill. They're going to resurrect Haku somehow, even in the line of sight. And right now for Minneapolis, they are in disrepair as the point has nearly been captured here off of essentially no fight whatsoever. Whole Hog coming out from Rock. They're trying to, push back here. Echo turns around, picks up Jesus. And at this point in time, it's going to be a recollection here from our offensive side as Mascot teams up with the hook from Rock to get the kill on Progi. So that will be a reset. The staggered Diva not necessarily there. Oh, very close on Jur, the hook to try and get a reset or to get an extended stagger on the Mercy.
And Rock is pushing very far ahead with Roadhog here, trying to get a little extra stagger, trying to disrupt the attack. They almost gave up the point on that first push. They almost didn't touch in time. They were a little too focused there on the frag fight.
Jesus yet again comes in with the first pick, and now they're going to be using the Bastion with that configuration tank Transcendence out shield as well. But now with the kill, they're actually going to be able to resurrect Mascot through the amount of damage that Bastion was able to output. As they finally set up now, the kills are all but completed. Nick, the last one left alive, and even as that is set, he does go down. So on to point 2 for Mirage and Minneapolis. The two Widows going at each other. And Echo deciding not to take the fights directly.
getting picked there. And one of the things I want to highlight about the end of that point A, Overwatch is so often a game of seconds and inches. Mascot, as Orisa came in and tried to drop a shield right in front of RockMF on Roadhog, was about a second and a half too late. RockMF got picked, then Mascot did too. Now they're both on new heroes for this point B. They've gone to D.Va and Winston, so it looks like they're going to be doing a little bit of defensive diving here.
Not necessarily a bad choice. Their anti-dive kind of fell apart, or that stationary combo that Orisa and the Roadhog kind of fell apart. They weren't able to really take anything from it. Dive commences. They're going to go on the high ground, find out that Bastion. Self-destruct in the backline. Nick gets caught out, and unfortunately for Minneapolis here, they use the Valkyrie, but they're not going to be able to find any sort of value from it whatsoever, as their tanks have nearly all fallen down. Rock and Gravy, the only two left alive here, trying to contest it out some more. The DMAC coming back out, and now Gravy's left to stall by his lonesome into a dodge of a scatter arrow of all things. So he does stall out about a 5-second margin, though the point continues to roll in Mirage's favor.
Nick can be so hard to play in a defensive dive as a Zenyatta, so I really feel for Nick there. The entire team dove, and the D.Va self-destruct came out, but there was no Winston shield available to protect him. Couldn't get under cover quickly. That's just how it goes when you play a support that can't keep up with divers.
Yep, and at this point, Jesus has been completely uncontested on Widow through second and third. There really hasn't been a chance for anyone to, through the latter half of first and second, as Echo switching off the Widow to the Genji. They're going to commence the dive. The Dragons, though, on cart to zone out the support. The DMAC comes in yet again. Rock goes down, and the tank's just not there anymore. So there's no longer that presence on point. Pulse Bomb going to land on Orisa. Progi, though, survives with the help of the Fortify and the healing. And that means that, yet again, that's going to be another push forward for Mirage as Rock gets cleaned up at the last. And as, again, just a fight that is not even coming close to going in Minneapolis' favor.
And that was, I think, a textbook defense against that dive by Mirage. The Dragons were perfectly placed to split up the divers. There was so much protection that the dive DPS just couldn't break through it, and there was always Jesus on the Widow just clicking on heads back there. So hard to succeed as a dive when those things are all aligned.
Infrasight is out, as is the Valkyrie here from Mirage. They are going to use the Bastion, who has not been dislodged yet. And Haku, with the combination of his team, is going to rain terror through the ranks of Minneapolis, the team, and not necessarily the city here. Primal Rage out from Mascot, just trying to contest again some more, but with the combination of the Bastion and the Hanzo, there's really not a whole lot a main tank can do in this situation. He's going to just continue out to contest it at the last second, jumps away. Gravy sitting on the cart, they're almost there, very, very close. The Dragon Blade is brought out, but is there any kills coming through? No, Haku mows him down. The self-destruct zone away, Transcendence out now with the Valkyrie. Wheats needing to contest out. They have not a lot left to work with, and they have not much further to go to Mirage. Another kill yet again. Wheats now. Valkyrie expires. The call down mech comes through, so Rock will get a little bit more extra time with which to contest, as finally gets the self-destruct out, goes down before it even detonates, and that will be round one completed by Mirage.
We're going to see a replay on Haku as Zenyatta there. And again, as I said before the match, you always want to keep an eye on your Zenyatas, just because if they pop off, they can swing a map entirely by themselves.
The one thing to note there from Mirage, of course, is that they ran a single support comp throughout this map, right? They ran sort of that. Again, we often see teams opening up just as a build on from that highlight there, the Bastion with the I believe configuration tank at the end into just shooting. But the thing to note is that on first point, it's not uncommon to see a solo support composition, right? You see the Mercy, you see the double sniper, and you see the Bastion. These are not necessarily uncommon. What does become uncommon is just not getting contested throughout the map, and, you know, you just stay on that comp that is not necessarily known for its success through second and third, and you just stay on it through the point capture on third, a notoriously difficult point to capture. So I think, you know, Mirage here has certainly looked more accomplished on, again, Minneapolis's map pick than Minneapolis themselves have looked.
Absolutely, and it's all about the ult economy there. For Mirage on that last point C push, they were just juggling the ults, only using as much as they ever needed for one push at a time. really good display of how to only use the ults that you really need to win a team fight. It just seemed like they always had one or two more ults available than Minneapolis did the entire last half of that match.
So it will be. Minneapolis here has to just build on what they learned, right? They've had now a map and a half to go against Mirage. They've shown that they can contest them, at least to some extent, on Ilios. And while the attack, or while their defense round on Junkertown leaves a little bit to be desired, they definitely have to just come in and just put that behind them and try and clean up. Now, the Bastion comp comes back out for the offense here, as it's going to be the the 2 DPS, or 3 DPS look, as Nick doesn't even manage to set up, as the Orisa shield just wasn't in place properly. And that means that Minneapolis is going to be forced back to spawn the hard way in this first look. They're going to be walking all the way up our Mirage to the spawn doors, as it were. And now, Jesus has been completely uncontested here on the high ground.
And you can't set up a pirate ship, you can't start to sail if you don't get the Bastion on the point fairly quickly. Got held up inside spawn by that early barrage of defensive firepower. And by the time the Bastion was able to come out, by the time Nick was able to get out there, he was so far away from Mascot on Orisa that the hook was able to come in, get around the shield, get him, abort the entire push before it could begin. And that's a textbook way of how to stall out on Junkertown Point A.
Echo picks up the one clip on Jesus, and that gives the opening for the offense here. The Riptire's going to find Nick, but he's in a safe position. Jur does get the Resurrect off on Progi. Red Start, the only real damage here now. Echo trying to find some value in the backline, blinking around, trying to find a kill. The Pulse Bomb is online. Red Start, very, very low, does get healed up by Jur. Valkyrie now out from the defense. They want to win this fight right again. They don't give any space whatsoever to Minneapolis, rather, does Mirage. As the DMAC coming very, very close for Fika. Will it happen? Yes, it will. Finally, it does come through. Red Start is down. In for sight out yet again for Jesus, but the configuration tank on point with the cleanup. And as a result, they're going to continue to roll forward. But a rather expensive, basically leave from spawn push from Minneapolis there.
And again, it's all about who's getting the picks with these two comps. And they just kept pushing, Minneapolis did, and kept pushing until they were able to get one or two down, force out the Resurrect, and get on the way. So it's going to be hard for Mirage to get back on the point, but they've eaten up a whole lot of time here.
Supercharger coming back right out. The self-destruct is over the top. It's going to find it, and the kill on Nick simultaneously. The self-destruct in return going to find nothing at all as Rock comes through. Actually, I say that a little too soon as Fika does get DMEC. Jesus down now to 1 HP. Can't really peek, though he does anyway. 12 health, and he picks up the headshot on Gravy, and then comes in with the cleanup. Red Start now assisting on the point. Just that sheer damage. Jesus is now completely uncontested on that high ground. Still 12 HP. Not able to even really be looked at here by the people of Minneapolis. Rock will be finally killed. A merciful ending to that, what could have been a brutal stagger.
I always find fascinating how different teams react to Orisa's ult coming down. When Mirage put down the ult that time, when Progi dropped it, you saw a lot of people in Minneapolis drop everything and go to try to kill the ult. Sometimes you see teams back off, let that time out. They didn't really feel like they had time to do that, so they committed to killing the ult, and while they were focused on that, they lost a few picks.
Jesus coming in with a big 2K here, and that's just going to spell disaster as the Riptire finds the last person trying to run away, and Gravy finds in tight that the Widow's Kiss is actually more deadly to oneself than the enemy. So, now to 30 seconds remaining, and at this point, Minneapolis has nothing to work with. Switching to dive, Mascot already chunked down to less than half HP from just the cross-map spam from the combination of Junkrat and Widowmaker.
What I want to see is some better prioritization on the ults if they can generate any of this fight. The Tracer Bomb came out, hit both Roadhog and Orisa, but didn't get any kills because they both dropped their cooldowns to survive it. Got to get more value if they manage to pull off anything else here.
Valkyrie out in defense. They have triggered overtime, but the kills are not coming through. Rockets DMEC. Weeks has to contest. There isn't anyone left alive but Nick, and Nick's going to find that across the map, solo as a Zen is not a place to be. So Mirage Esports not just winning Junkertown, but winning Junkertown in dominating fashion over Minneapolis here, as we see Red Start come in with the Hanzo cleanup for our play of the game.
I really love what he does on these dragons. Every time he placed a dragon, it was placed extremely well to either get a pick or do a useful zone out. A lot of times you'll see the dragons come out and it's a zoning ult, but it didn't really zone anyone away. Red Street was getting a lot of value from those.
Certainly, and we are already through our first 2 maps of this best of 5 series, and
It's nice to be appreciated.
Mirage has just been kind of running away with it here through basically, I think, the first point and the third map. The second point of Ilios was a lot closer, 99 to 100 map, but regardless, it still has been Mirage in the driver's seat throughout the game so far.
So we're going to throw back to the desk here. Going to take a 5-minute or so analysis while the teams take a little halftime break here, and then we'll be back with map 3.
Thank you, Mukaikubo and lafon. Great cast on the day, guys. So far, Volamel, let's start to break it down. Maggots are bringing their A game. It looked very close on Ilios with their anti-dive composition, but it seemed to eventually get broken open. What did you see in terms of what Mirage was doing that allowed them to finally overcome the composition that's supposed to counter them?
Definitely. So the Orisa Hog style, it is the anti-dive, but it also is more of a pick composition. So what you're looking for there is you're looking for the environmental kills, you're looking for the halt hook combos, you're looking for quick and very explosive ways to just take a man advantage. You know, when you do run that, you do kind of lack that mobility, and that's exactly what Mirage decided to abuse when they ran around the sides and flanked them quite heavily. It's the strong and slow versus the fast and weak. It's, you know, abusing that mobility, getting in the flanks, and just running and pulling apart the team as they actually want to stay kind of close together with that Orisa and the Hog. They want to stay clumped up and really work on those halt and hooks to try and get those picks.
And they took the first capture too on Well to remind people. A great Orisa halt took down 2, and that eventually allowed them to flip it. But it seemed like the ultimate economy eventually was what brought Mirage back into it and allowed their dive to work. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that in terms of how they're utilizing their ultimates to empower their style? And maybe is it more patience from Mirage that allowed them to take Ilios?
I definitely think it was a lot of patience. If I have to give, you know, if I can give kudos, I would say that Minneapolis, I would say Minneapolis, you know, kudos to you guys. You got to get some brownie points with me. Running something a little bit slower, but running it very aggressively, playing very smart, getting out of the point, using the closeness of the point on Lighthouse to their advantage with the triple tank tracer, I believe they ran. Using that, abusing it. Same, you know, it's nice to see that they identified their composition, what it wants to do, and they're trying to play up to that. And I think that really gave them the first fight, which is incredibly big for control maps. I believe it's about like a 60 to 70% win rate in the entire map, especially in the top tier of play. If you could win that first fight, it's incredibly valuable. So, you know, they were actually in the driver's seat there. Now, when it came to their ultimate usage, yes, it did kind of feel a bit over eager that they could, you know, win every fight that they then participated in, whereas Mirage took it a little bit slower, took it a little bit more controlled. They were very skimpy on their ult usage. They didn't use too much. Frugal might be the word I was looking for. They were very frugal on their ults and built up the bank basically without having to use too much to win the fight.
And I think one thing to note too was, especially on something like Control Point, when we look at the DPSs from Mirage, you have Jesus and Red Star. When you have an anti-dive composition, but you're not focusing the same direction, it can make it really difficult. I think Jesus especially was landing some very key pulse bombs, especially on Well as Lighthouse to break those anti-dive compositions. I guess, did you note anything special about just in terms of how he plays Tracer over some of the other, you know, other players and other Tracers that we've seen so far in this tournament?
Not entirely too much. I wasn't necessarily, you know, keeping my eye on him. I did notice that he was flanking very well. He kind of started the fights most of the time. I believe there was a great dive on Well in particular, where both of the flankers and the Winston dove in and really started to pick apart this team. I thought that was incredibly precise and just very, you know, very nice and very crispy. I know I like to use the word crispy a lot, but again, it's nice to see dives happening at the same time. I think that's something that even top teams struggle with at times. So seeing, open division team do that, that's a step in the right direction.
And yeah, it looks very close there. I know it was a 2-0 on Ilios, and it doesn't paint the whole picture because of how close it was on the first map. But eventually, I would have been really curious to see them actually go to Ruins then and see the sniper compositions. But I guess we just had to wait for Junkertown because it was going to be Mirage. They brought out the double sniper composition and they made it work. It was so interesting. Solo support. How did that lead to the success in the 3 capture for Mirage?
So Mirage, they ran the kind of double sniper variant, and what's interesting to note when you watch that is exactly where the 3 DPS points are looking. So if you look at them kind of like little lighthouses, right? Where is the light kind of being shown? And if you actually go back and look at that map, you can see Jesus having this very large sightline sitting in the back. You can see the Bastion is another point. He might ride the payload sometimes, but he is a sniper in a way, right? He takes a lot of attention. You're going to have to deal with him sometime.
Right.
They're all looking in different directions, covering different angles. It's very important that you do that because if you overlap angles, you could be shooting at the same targets. Not to say that you want to split damage, but you want to abuse as much ground as you can. You want to use the map to your advantage. You don't want to all be focusing on the same choke point. Move around the map, take a bunch of angles, and you can really see how Mirage did that and abused the map to their advantage.
And they seem to stretch just the map in their favor, right? You just talked about the sight lines and just what it denies. Like there's multiple layers now to their offense, which feels more like a defense in the way they ran it between on Junkertown. And we noted too, Progi on the Orisa was a big part of that. Even if you got past the snipers, you're diving into a Bastion with a shield and with a halt, this crowd control. How important were those halts and Orisa specifically on this pick for escorting the Bastion and the payload together?
Just to highlight, especially, and I love that you mentioned Progi. I believe on point B, he had an amazing halt that I think halted the dive when it was trying to initiate, and it just instantly gimped them and hamstrung them entirely. And when you get your movement kind of sucked out of you, the dive just becomes this kind of lackluster mobile composition, but you don't have Winston Leap, you ran out of rocket boosters on Diva, you don't have dash anymore in Genji, and that's your initiation. If you get your initiation gimped out of you, that means like the kind of fight's a little slow. You don't have that explosive power to get on top of the enemies and really start to bring them apart, split them apart, and shred them down. So I got to give Progi kudos there. I think that it was kind of, not to throw any shade, but it was night and day looking at how key the Mirage barriers were placed around their Bastion. Whereas, Minneapolis had some struggles at times. Their Bastion was picked off a few times with the Junkrat just, drilling the Bastion over and over, and the shield wasn't necessarily in the right place. But there again, it's a new team. Give them some slack. They're gonna definitely come back next week and do some work.
Yeah, and a lot to learn from this match, right? I think it's probably good to face a team that is as polished as Mirage is on your first weekend, right?
Definitely.
Because it sets you on a different track, almost like the losers bracket, right? And then you battle your way up through there. You can take those learnings and then kind of ride your wave through with the winning record after week 1. If they lose, it's still not over yet, right? And they've shown some, of course, like you mentioned, a lot of light despite any shade that can be construed from that. But let's talk about how and as we get back into or we're approaching the end of our time here between this break, I guess heading into it, we saw that for Maggots, is there going to be a specific thing that they need to fix? Because it seems like they were ready to fight fire with fire. It just is missing a little ingredient. I'm not sure what it is.
If I had to, mark anybody, I would say that it's something that we talk about a lot, but I think the tanks need to really focus on Jesus. They need to partner up a little bit better, so that their DPS, the Minneapolis DPS, can really start to shine a little bit. I know they have it in them. I've seen good things so far. We just need to give them a little bit more room and start to pressure Jesus a little bit more, so he's not just free shooting you and free casting you uncontested. Contest that boy.
Right. Don't let Jesus run around in your backline without contesting him. We'll be heading to Hanamura and heading back to the casters. Lafon, Mukaikubo, take it away.
Thank you. And we are going to beautiful Hanamura for our map 3 here. So we're going to be doing the requisite assault map, our beloved 2CP. I think that Minneapolis might have a better shot here. And I say that because Where they looked the best to me is when they were able to choose the time and place where they were supposed to be engaging. They were able to control the ground. When they weren't doing so well was when the payload was moving, they couldn't quite get set up, they couldn't square their feet, their legs were getting crossed under them, metaphorically speaking. On a 2CP map, you're always going to be fighting in about the same place, you're always going to be fighting at a time of the attackers choosing. I think they're going to be a little better off there compared to the quick payload motion of Junkertown. Lafon, how about you?
I think one of the things to note, though, is while that may be the case, while I think that when it comes to playing slow, Minneapolis definitely has their advantage there, or that's where they have to look to really come back into this matchup. Hanamura specifically, the fact that they're attacking first puts them at a disadvantage here, right? First point is not necessarily, perhaps favors them a little bit more here, but second point, especially if they end up getting two there, ends up slowing down a whole lot to the point where you can get gummed up in, one pick here or one fight ability loss there. So they're going to have to, I think, compared to what we saw on Junkertown, a map that is kind of hard to, you either win first point very handily or you lose it very handily. The fact that they kind of lost it very handily means that on second point, I'm kind of worried for their showing.
We are going to have Minneapolis on attack first here instead of defending first like the prior map. Looks like a fairly standard dive comp coming out from both sides except for Jura and Ana here.
That's going to be, I mean, Ana's not exactly uncommon here on Hanamura, especially on the defense. The first kill coming through on Jesus is he's going to pick up his counterpart in Trace. The sleep dart is there. The one clip is there as well. And a brilliant play. That's going to assemble the dive for the defense. They're going to push up very aggressively. Jesus wants to get this DMAC. Not going to quite find it. Recalls out. And he's going to go back to reset with his team. But that's going to be some time immediately stalled off of basically a solo play, at least on the initial kill, followed up by a great sleep dart from Jur on the Ana.
And now Minneapolis knows what they're going to be dealing with on the attack. They've got all the intel that they need. They could make some switches if they wanted to. I would like to see a little bit more tanky composition now that they know they're fighting dive. But as they go in up onto the high ground on the left here, they're going to engage with what they've got.
The dive comes in, but now Echo is so low, and the supports are actually going to peel for themselves by picking up a good 2 kills easily. Haku coming in with the headshot on the Winston and the Tracer. So that is a dive stymied by the defense, and now Mirage has set themselves up in a good position. Again, they have full control of the ult economy here. There really hasn't been an opportunity for Minneapolis to really set up in any sort of way.
And you look at the kill feed and you see a lot of different portraits there for Mirage. This is a team effort. This isn't one person really popping off and dominating right now. It's everybody knowing their role, executing a preset plan, and Mirage has to break them out of that.
Jesus with a stick on the Zen as he leaves the spawn doors and actually manages to get out. So a well-placed timing, and then Red Start with the cleanup. They're going to continue going forward. Red Start comes in with the cleanup on Wheats. Again, this is going to be a spawn hold on Hanamura first. Not something you see very frequently. It seems like Mirage has almost warmed up to the team that they're playing against. Almost like, again, that first map just kind of caught them unawares, and now they're really taking it to them.
And Jesus was actually not trying to stick who he hit. He was going for Wheats there. He was going for the Mercy, but he hit the Zen.
The kill's not going to come through. The Dragon Blade is finally used, and the defense are going to start to fall apart, but the offense had to use so much to get there. The offense used the Dragon Blade, and then the defense just came in with the Primal Rage and the Self-Destruct and still came out on top.
And Minneapolis is seeming a little flat here. I don't know if they're having a hard time getting back out of the break or if they're just feeling a little worn down after Junkertown, but they keep on doing almost the same thing, only a little switch from Wheats onto Lucio here. I'm not sure that's going to be enough to break this defense.
The dive commences yet again. Primal Rage is brought out from the offense. They finally force the Transcendence, though. Nick is down, so they're not going to have that. Finally, the kills are coming in as the DMAC finally exists, but again, they're still turning it back, and Rock is not even able to get the self-destruct up. They're going to reset here. They have 50 seconds left, and they do pull out the Transcendence finally from Haku, but it's not necessarily going to be enough. There's still stuff in the bank, in the ultimate bank for Mirage, as again, Jesus going to go sit at the spawn with that Pulse Bomb online, trying to find that early entry kill to just nullify this push. forces
Oh,
and
not
the
so much
pulse
that time.
bomb whiffs, but it doesn't matter because it forces the transcendence from Nick. They have to go in on this, and with that, the transcendence expires, and Red Star is free to slash and dash through the team. He finds one, but the self-destruct comes back out. Now the offense finally getting kills, as Fika in the pilot form will take out Echo, who has not had a good run of it here on Hanamura so far.
And you hate to say something like trying a zoning pulse bomb, and I know that Jesus didn't want it to be a zoning pulse bomb, but that is, like you said, kind of what happened. But Jesus, it seemed like he couldn't really get back in time to affect that fight on the point well enough. He wanted to get a little fancy going in behind the attack and deleting it before it even began. And to be fair, if he had landed that pulse bomb, this map would be over right now.
That was fortuitous for the offense, I think, in that regard. That said, they now find themselves on point B of Hanamura, and Red Star farming away on that Dragon Blade, up to 50% already. Nick not even close to that Transcendence. There will be an entry for the defense to really hold and solidify their point here, but the first kill, yet again, happening for the defense here. So Mirage Esports just cleaning up any sort of entry that the offense thought to get, and on top of that, it was just a clean fight win. No ultimates whatsoever.
And now Echo really has to get back quickly before he gets staggered here, and he'll be able to do so. But the first push on the point B of a 2CP map is always critical, and Minneapolis, they did the obvious. They went up through the right-hand side. Mirage knew they were coming well in advance, and they just defended it exactly according to the textbook.
The only thing here coming online for our offense is the Dragon Blade. They are slowly inching that Primal Rage, but no support ultimates yet. Jesus with the Pulse Bomb finding Nick. That's not gonna be good. They are gonna get the Resurrect off, but the kill comes right back in. There's just no healing there while the res is happening, and as a result, the Primal Rage will be used to just zone some more, get the kills, and Red start dashing through the team with those resets, and it's gonna be a wipeout here for Minneapolis.
And just like Junkertown's final point, Mirage is just, those ults are coming in. One, see if they need another. One, see if they need another. There's no wastage going on right now. And Minneapolis needs to come up with a new idea on attack because Mirage knows how to defend that right-hand side flank.
And they are going to choose to go across the this far side. Jesus does spot them out, though, and calls it right away. So the rotation happens nearly immediately, and as a result, Minneapolis rotates right back around as they're trying to find some level of entry, and they're going to choose to go directly down the center of the map. They're going to be caught out driving directly through, though. Jesus in the backline yet again. Support zoned out. The first kill, though, is happening. The first kill happened for Minneapolis, but they're not going to get anything else beyond Echo with the last two kills in the Dragon Blade. And frankly, he may have gotten 3 kills, but there's no follow-up whatsoever.
And the reason there was no follow-up there, Progi timed his jump down from the high ground perfectly to cut the attacking Minneapolis push in half. So the hope was that by doing the 2 rotations, they would get Mirage to cross their legs up and be vulnerable. Mirage wasn't having any of that. They knew exactly what Minneapolis was going to do, and they counterplayed it just exactly like they would draw it up in a VOD review.
In goes the defense. They are somewhat of a bind now, as they are building on that 5 ultimate push, but the defense now gonna use the nano boost on Nick, or sorry, on Progi, and Nick just gonna find that 3 people on him with a nano boost is not exactly a good time.
And again, Mirage is just clogging up that right flank, and it's hard to see how this comp is going to be able to push through that. If they're going to keep going to the right, I would have liked to have seen a tankier composition so they could just push in with all the shields and get to a good position before they start inevitably getting picked off. Right now, they're a little bit too lightweight a divey comp to be able to push through that defended choke.
Transcendence coming in from Nick, but it's a little too late as Wheats goes down. This is the last 10 seconds of the map. They need to get to the point. Tactical Visor will be used. They're finally getting at least 1 kill. Transcendence, so right back in as Echo is on point, trying to just stagger it out. The kills need to come through. Primal Rage finding the Ana in the corner. They're gonna get the kill. Pulse Bomb whiffs. Jesus not finding what he was looking for. Quite the target. Pulse Bomb on Red Start picks him up. They're finally getting the kills. They're going to almost get that first tick. Jesus gets back in the nick of time to just contest a little bit longer as they inch up closer, so they get that first third. But can they get more than that? Now the contest continues. It rotates a little bit further. The respawns in taking so long here for the defense. Self-destruct up. They can't get off the point at all. And Haku picks up Wheats. That's going to be a D-Mech as well. Now, the team in red are finding the color of their blood as well. The deaths come through, and that's going to be round 1 complete. Nearly 50% on the map completion on second point for Minneapolis. They're going to have to be content with that. But man, it's an uphill battle if they even want to get back in the series.
And there is good news for Minneapolis. They did get more than a third, meaning if they can full hold B, they will win the map. And I do like in that final push, they were able to just rush through the choke. It looked to me like Mirage got a little over-aggressive holding that right choke. They smelled that timer ticking down. They felt like they were going to get the win, pushed a little forward. And as soon as Minneapolis was able to get people in behind that defensive line, then they were able to unhinge that defense. It's all about removing the easy plays from Mirage. As long as you keep pushing slowly in a straight line up one of the most obvious routes into a point, a well-coordinated team is going to know how to defend that. You've got to get them confused. And Minneapolis couldn't do that until right at the very end there with that last desperation push.
It's almost like the overtime timer turns your brain off, but in a good way. So you stop thinking about entries and you just, go in. To the point where, realistically, it happened in back-to-back points. On point A, it was the last 10 seconds of the fight where they took point A, right? And then again on point B, their actual progress was just, again, in the last 10 seconds. So if they can get past that, okay, we're going to enter here, we're going to try and rotate properly there, and just go as a team, they might actually see a lot more, success. Because they haven't been, it has, again, this match hasn't been in their favor so far. We can't even make a stretch to claim that, but there have definitely been shining moments, or like glimmers in the dark, if you will, in how they've played so far on across all 3 maps, realistically.
And maybe Minneapolis should just replace the normal music with the almost about to lose music. Maybe that would help.
It couldn't hurt at this point. The dive now commencing from the offense. Red start on a Hanzo, getting damage amped right away by Jer on that Mercy, trying to find something, and that's going to include a kill on Mascot right away. The Hanzo coupled with the Tracer just means that Mascot went down so quickly. And of course, the damage at Mercy. Red Star just spamming damage across the map. The Hanzo doing so much work here. Finds another kill. That's 3 in a row for him. The scatter arrow comes out. Gonna try and get the D-Mech on Rock here, and that's gonna happen. And now the defense are in complete disarray. Echo goes down as well to Red Start. And gets an assist on the Pilot Diva at the very end. So Red Start so close to that early Dragons, and frankly, was the driving damage on that first push.
And it's all about the focus that was coming out of Mirage there. The defense was a little bit scattered, a little bit here and there, but they weren't able to coordinate despite being physically separated. They were separated in terms of what they were thinking as well. That's absolutely fatal on a 2CP defense. You've got to pick a target and kill it like Mirage just did.
The Dragons from the high ground forcing the tanks to just get off of there, essentially get out, it says. The Pulse Bomb not finding what Echo quite wants it to, as Gravy on the high ground. The EMP is there. Haku goes down immediately, and Red Star follows not long after. They finally are getting some progress, but they need to get to the point. They can't allow that first tick to come online, and they do get back in time, as the only one left here is Fika. Not quite out with his team yet, but they do hold for the moment. And they do get the valuable EMP taken away from them, though, due Minneapolis.
And absolutely, as obvious, key EMP from Gravy there. You need to see him charge that EMP up real quickly here so that he can try to use it to save another push here. So, Gravy already starting, got to get the damage fast.
Now, the high ground being contested yet again, as it's going to be Minneapolis forced off there to get to the low ground. Nano Boost on the high ground. Mascot going to find the first kills through. Echo does get out with the skin of his teeth, and they are going to, the 2 tanks combining for the kills now. So, Mascot going to go very weak, not using the Primal Rage. They feel that they don't quite need it yet. The D-Mech, though, Rock is going to have to actually use the self-destruct here, as they're afraid of an immediate take if he was left out for too long. And they pull that ultimate out for nothing, quite frankly.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that Rock needed to use that self-destruct there, but in the heat of the moment, it's understandable why he did. He didn't know that Mirage was already going backwards.
That pulse bomb is going to be resurrected right away, but that again, that's an ability that is no longer in play for our offense. Jesus with the pulse bomb, not quite finding his entry that he's looking for. Primal Rage on point. They need to get back again. Gravy with the first kill. Haku is down, and they're trying to zone they're trying to zone Mirage out of the point. Primal Rage exchange,
is up.
Transcendence used as well. EMP is online, but the kills are going to the offense. EMP from the high ground. Progi goes down immediately. It's a huge EMP. Self-destruct. Gonna find Echo, who wasn't quite able to get away in time, but the kills are finally here for Mirage. Or for Minneapolis, rather, as Mascot continue to be supported by the on point. Just so much healing there. And Fika, the only one left alive, going to find himself joined in a pact of sorts by his counterpart on Minneapolis.
That was good discipline to not kill her there. It's something that you see a lot of teams at a lot of levels mess up and immediately go for. Mirage here is, they keep on trying the same approach through the right-hand flank, and it does feel like Minneapolis is barely holding on. They are going to have the lower ult economy for this coming up defense, and again, they're just buying time for Gravy. Gravy's got to be tracking Jesus real closely here.
Mascot's so very weak. The Helix Rocket is there, but the kill just eludes him. Rock now has that self-destruct. They're gonna find the first kill. Our Mirage, the self-destruct on top, is gonna be bubbled out, and the kill on top of that. And now this is gonna be disastrous as Red Star comes in with tactical visor. There's no one left on point. The nano boost finds Mascot in a bad position, and now is there anyone who can really contest? They find another kill. They're coming out from spawn, but they can't even make it. Rock unable to leave in the heat of the moment. Mirage Esports taking Hanamura and taking our series 3-0.
Not a terrible defense there, I've got to say. They held for a good few pushes on Hanamura B, and yes, 2 CP lull, I know, but they were using good ult economy. It feels like they just ran out of time. They couldn't keep relying on Gravy to keep on being the hero with that Sombra, but that's what their defense was kind of forced into by the end there.
And I mean, if I'm Minneapolis, I take the good from this. I take the good from this map and leave the bad, or from this set, from this match. There were moments where they played Mirage really closely. We go back to, of course, Ilios Lighthouse, where they played them so closely there, to that 99 to 100% with the composition that they chose. Junkertown, I think you kind of burned the game tape. You look at that, and you're like, well, we didn't really succeed on the offense, we didn't really succeed on the defense. But then you go to Hanamura, and as you mentioned, their ult economy on the defense, especially on point B, was really remarkable. They pulled out, I think, 4 or 5, maybe even 6 fights in a row, just off of using the proper ultimates and the proper rotation, and then they just lost to a massive time bank deficit. But ultimately, I think there's definitely room here for Minneapolis, and even though they go to 1-1 here now in I believe in Overwatch Open, there's still room for them down the road.
Yeah, 9-1 will still get you into the playoffs probably. So as long as you're perfect from here on out, Minneapolis, you're probably fine. And they do have things that they can take from this. They do have the positives, like you were saying. And the problems that we see, they are fixable. They just have to practice more. They've got a lot of the talent that they need. It's just going to be figuring out how to work as a team, I think, is what their next step is.
Well, that does it for us casters here for this particular match. We'll send it back to our analysts, and it was good again.
Thank you all.
Congratulations to Mirage Esports. They're going to take the 3-0 over Minneapolis Maggots for this match. Volamel seemed like maybe the wind out of their sails. Junkertown was over. They forgot their sails there. They left it. They left the Orisa shield, and they entered Hanamura and seemed a little bit more deflated on this map. Given that they were on the attack first and what you saw, was there anything in particular you felt, was notable about, like, what was the momentum?
After that Junkertown match, I can't say that I would be deflated either. It was rough to deal with. You know, when you have a dominant sniper like Jesus sitting in the back, it's hard to contest him, especially on that map. You know, Junkertown is very long. We'll say that.
Yeah.
You can sit in the back. It's very difficult to coordinate around being able to dive him and pressure him so he isn't just shooting at you uncontested. So I can imagine that it would be very fun to do that too many times. And leading into Hanamura, yeah, you're right. I think you hit the nail on the head. They did look a little bit deflated. They lack that energy that I touched on in the pregame that they need to press the attack. They have to full court press these boys. Can't let them sit there and just shoot you, man. Get out there and fight. And you saw what happened when they got, overtime ticks, like the casters mentioned.
Yeah.
Overtime happens, it raises your in-game IQ like a bajillion. You're just like, oh, I must get on the point. And then they dive the point and it actually happens. I know everybody in solo queue, you know what I'm talking about. Overtime ticks, you get on that point and it just happens. Everything seems to coordinate really well because you're all focusing on that same objective. And I think, again, the casters touched on this really well. If you can nail that kind of mentality the entire game, you might actually had Hanamura B. I think they had a great defense. Not to get ahead of myself, but I think that the Maggots just need to take it in stride, not necessarily get too over emotional, and really continue to keep that high energy, because I think you're going to squeak out a lot of map wins against teams that you might not necessarily think you could beat.
And they seem to almost come into stride at the end of their defense. They had the Sombra, which was pretty much taking out some of the momentum away from Mirage. When you're a Tracer and you get hacked, there's very little you can do. And that's what he was doing to Jesus time and time again on that defense.
Definitely. His EMPs were very nice. I think there was a couple fights where I was a little worried that, it could be over. And then Gravy comes in with off the top rope EMP and really kind of clutches it out. It really stops a lot of the key ultimates that Mirage would have liked to use. But unfortunately, silence means Taki. So you can't do much of anything against that. So,
Right.
Gotta love it. EMP's great, good coverage from Gravy, and I think you're right. They started to abuse their hacks towards the end of the game. He marked Tracer really well, and limited Jesus's mobility, and made some space for his team.
Exactly. And I think speaking of making space too, if we return to their first offense again, they had to take a couple tries. I have to, of course, note Jesus making the stick, and Mukaikubo hit it on the nail on the head too. Wasn't going for I believe who's the I think it was the
Wheat?
Zenyatta there, Nick. Yeah, stuck a Nick instead of
Yes.
Wheat too, especially when you're feeling deflated like that. So definitely have to give a shout out to Jesus for those sticks. But it was actually Rock that made a big play, put in the self-destruct when Mirage was in cleanup mode there. So for your take on how that attack that eventually broke it open for them went, what was it that helped them out there? Was it their aggressiveness? Was it just a really well-placed self-destruct that helped them get there? What were the ingredients that helped them take point A?
Well, you first need to wash your hands. If we're gonna bring in the cookie analogy, just gotta wash those hands, sanitize. As the owl memes go. Got to sanitize those hands. You come in, you add a little bit of aggressiveness, but the aggressiveness comes from emergency no time left store. You get the sale on, aggressive spice, and you dive the point. It's going to, kind of force you to all have the same mentality. Like I touched on, you start to, that was the staging ground, right? That's the start of the attack. Then the nail in the coffin is the double kill from Rock. That was the big nail in the coffin to give them that point and blow that point wide open, and gives them, a breath of fresh air. Like, oh wow, we did it. We took a point against, some of these teams that we've watched, right? So I think that definitely kind of gave them hope for point B, and it showed. They were a little bit more, active. Granted, they only kind of chose one specific attack path a couple times. They did end up rotating to the high ground. I think it was just a little bit too late, but if they do that off the bat and they start to, follow the textbook, allow the Tracer to come around, be that solo threat, then you can take the high ground once they kind of have to deal with her, be able to take that man advantage to take the fight on the high ground, control the high ground, set up your soldier for success, and then you can start from there. But don't just dive up mid. Running it up mid isn't League of Legends. We don't want to do that. Let's use the flankers, man. Use the flankers.
That's right. I mean, this is you can't solo carry as hard as in maybe when you have someone like Faker in the mid lane. But anyways, back to Overwatch though. I love that you bring up their going down the mid lane, and the fact that when they did take the upper ground, it looked really good for them. So it almost seemed like between that and the overtime mentality that they were maybe the shot calling wasn't quite there, or the mentality wasn't quite there. They're just like, yo, we took point A, and then like, what do we do now? Right. And so I think coming down to understanding like exactly how they want to attack a team like Mirage Esports, which is going to be really solid. Where can you find those holes in the defense and running it up mid. I mean, I think when we look at the tank line for Minneapolis as they engage there, they seem to split up.
Definitely. It's becoming more apparent as I watch more open division games that the tank synergy maybe necessarily isn't there for every team. You know, you need to follow in with your dive, and at times they did. But then there are other times I want to say the very last fight, it seemed like they were on two different wavelengths, and I really think that you need to really iron that out and be very vocal on where your Winston's going. Where does the diva want to do? You know, it's not just a one caller job. Everybody has to call. So getting the Winston, getting the diva on that same brain wavelength, I think is going to be key for them. But I don't necessarily think they need to counter. I think they just need to work on the fundamentals. You know, what are your win conditions? Because we saw a lot that their ultimates were a little staggered. You know, if you don't necessarily think you can win the fight, just run an eco push, run it in, see if you can force out ultimates, which is great for you because you're going to bank them up, you're going to stall them up. So if you can get in there were a couple times I wish that maybe certain ultimates were paired with others. Get in there, really iron out exactly what you could have done better, not necessarily how to pick the other team apart.
And I think we did start to see that they banked up the ultimates going into their last push, but
Definitely.
it wasn't enough. You saw Mirage's defense. They seemed to go from like this more conservative defense fighting inside to pushing them out more. They had like 5 ultimates going into that last or the second to last fight, and they just weren't able to use them in the right position. So did you think that was something that they were absolutely planning to do in terms of Mirage, that like they must have ultimates, so let's engage them sooner?
Definitely. I think a team of that caliber has an ult track that's probably pretty spot on. I've listened to a couple contenders teams. They're fairly close on, you know, exactly what teams have what ults, and even at, you know, percentage based. They're even quite close on how exact these ult charge percentages are on the opposite team. So I'm positive that Mirage knew exactly what kind of strategy, you know, Maggots were coming into this with, and they did deny them quite a bit. Obviously 5 ultimates is gonna, you know, give you some ground to stand on because of how strong some of these ultimates are. But again, you see the Winston dive in the high ground, he starts to displace them. If you don't have the high ground on this map, it's very difficult to consistently have that output of pressure. You have to look at Gravy there. He got in, got the EMPs off, but it was just a little bit too late. If they consistently try to pressure that high ground, that right side, I think they probably have a better chance at that and just taking that map, because I think they could have.
And I think as we round it up here in terms of our final thoughts, I think, of course, you just talked about Gravy, and I think that'll be in line with talking about MVPs for people we identified as the top players or the people who really were notable. Of course, if we ask Twitch chat, they're going to say Wheat was the MVP. He did a pretty solid job, got some boop kills there on Ilios. But for you, for each squad, who do you identify as someone who stood out to you?
Now, if I'm to kind of put my mind's eye in Junkertown, all I see is Jesus all day. He's popping off. He's shooting. He's hitting the shots that he needs to. You know, he has the space to work with. So it's a shooting gallery, and he just really put the pressure on Maggots, and it felt very hard for them to do much of anything. Now, you know, pivoting off of that, looking at what Minneapolis had going for them. I wasn't too impressed with Gravy on Junkertown, but he completely gave me a 180 when it came to his Sombra play.
Oh, yeah.
It was good tracking on that Tracer. He marked him very well. His EMPs were great. Hacks were great. I would like to see the team overall pressure the hacks a little bit more, be a little bit more proactive, allow your Sombra to set up a little bit more aggressively. But I think if they do that, it's going to be great. I think we're going to see a lot of Gravy in the future.
Awesome. Good stuff. Looking forward to some good Gravy in the future weeks of Open Division, but that's going to wrap it up for our coverage today of Week 1 of North American's Open Division here in Overwatch. Again, thanks to everyone and the whole production crew. Thanks to the casters from earlier. That was Gilfrost and Lemon Kiwi. Thanks to the casters just now, Mukaikubo and Lafon. Thanks to Volamel for being an analyst with me here on the desk. Thanks to Pimp in the Crib, who is behind the camera running the stream and giving you the bird's eye view and the POVs when you need it. So that's going to do it for us. But of course, the spin of Broadcast.gg production, if you guys don't know what it is, we're a group of esports broadcasters. We're just trying to get good. I mean, let's just leave it at that, right? And whatever we're doing, casters, observers, producers, hosts, analysts, you name it. If it's part of the esports ecosystem, we're home. Join us with the link down below. If you guys are looking to practice, one of the things we offer is even for teams as well as broadcasters, we do this thing called Scrim Nights where we broadcast all week. Teams get practice, they get VODs. We get to practice and be able to build towards productions like these. We're always trying to improve from across the board, from all the way from top to bottom. So guys, definitely come and join it up. So we'll have scrim nights running all week. But for more open division coverage, join us next weekend in EU. We start at 1 p.m. British Summer Time on Saturday and Sunday. And then for the NA portion, we record the Saturday games and we'll be debuting them. So tomorrow, each Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern, we will be broadcasting our Saturday game, our Saturday series. But other than that, just follow us on Twitter, broadcast.gg, for just the updates on the schedule. But again, this has been MooshuBeef. I've been your host today. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and we'll see you guys soon.